Audio. All right, there we go. Starting everything up. Already have Epic Pen out. Just get all the settings here. I'm going to try to keep this one short as I want to get back to writing. Switch this to live. That's already muted. And both of those are synced up. Okay. Go to Google Earth. Wait for Google Earth to load, actually. All right, are we going to get a stall? No. Get out of my face. This is way too low. Way too low. Get. Is there a way to change this? Ugh. Why is this view so narrow? Animation speed. Let's see. On-screen navigation controls. Screen center drawing tools. Billing. I'm not paying you money. Ugh. By all means, Google, Alphabet Corp. You're getting more than enough money from duped investors that have been convinced that your Google search AI is generating revenue somehow. Application theme, default view. What? Explore. Oh, like I said, it should just be on Earth. All right, that's good. How do I get rid of that extra top thing? All right. Isn't it view? Maybe grid lines, imagery, street view, hide menu bar. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Praise God. All right, and yeah, we need Twitter up over here to where did my bookmarks go? Oh, okay. They moved them over there. All right, who do we got? Nobody. Well, we do have somebody. All right, before moving on to the things in the title, since that's what everyone will come in expecting to see, do this real quick. Supposedly, this one, this peace deal or a ceasefire, which is like fourth one that's the fourth one that's gone down since everything started, regarding Gaza specifically, not any of the other fronts. But the one for Gaza, this one seems to actually be holding on for the moment. It's been multiple days and nothing new in escalation terms or in violation terms has happened as of yet. Supposedly, the remaining living hostages are going to be released. I think they said Monday. So we have 3 days to wait for that, see if that actually happens. And and also apart from that, obviously, any number of days to watch to see if everyone suddenly just resumes fighting. The This one was like, I guess, officially, like triple officially signed and recognized. So this is supposed to be the big real one, as opposed to the previous three, which were also real but kind of just collapsed immediately. So if this is if this is legitimate and this holds, then to maintain the whole state of emergency, he needs to avoid prosecution. Benjamin there is going to have to keep bombing Lebanon and or keep bombing Syria, uh, and or actually, even if he didn't continue those on his own, the Houthis in Yemen, even after the ceasefire, have still launched stuff. Probably because they don't expect it to go anywhere because the last three didn't. So they would still keep launching stuff at Israel regardless. So he can keep bombing them from their base in their overseas air base in the Red Sea, and could easily use that to continue the state of emergency. But ultimately, it would end up coming down to having to do another massive air campaign against Iran, which was already going to happen anyways, one way or another. Everyone kind of knew that. Got supposed leaked info back in the summer that it would be November would be a restart, and they did recently just declare last week or the week before that that they would they will restart bombing Iran sometime within the last 3 months of the year if quote unquote circumstances don't improve, which they gave no specificity to what they meant by circumstances or what would define improved circumstances. Uh, so that's intentional vagary, basically, to just provide, the provide the proverbial any avenue, any avenue of meaning, i.e., improved or unimproved conditions means whatever we want it to. Wait for the lag, wait for the lag, wait for the lag, wait for the lag. Okay, so as I was saying before Google Earth so rudely lagged us out, is that that's intentional vagary so that you, the one who wants to conduct the thing against the opponent, can, you use vague terms so that you can just say they mean whatever you want them to mean, so that you have a at least public presentation of reasoning, no matter what the circumstance. But yeah, so that's going to be happening sometime in the remaining 3 months. The supposed leak originally said November, uh, but likely because that was leaked or probably was deliberate disinformation, I would assume then it would probably be not November, so either this month or December, or it might still be in November, just like really late in November, because if I remember correctly, the leak specifically said the first half of November. So maybe it will still be in November, but not until the second half. Or they could do like triple psychological measures where they assume Iran will assume that it won't be in the first half of November because of that leak slash disinfo, and thus they expect that Iran won't be expecting it then, and so they'll end up doing it in the first half of November, anyways. But anyways, or otherwise, moving away from there to our favorite news zone coming up, Venezuela. Let me reposition this, get in a bit closer. Here, okay. So over the past month and couple weeks, the U.S. has gradually been moving more and more forces into the area around Venezuela. Close, I believe, 10 or so naval vessels, a mix of destroyers, missile cruisers, one small carrier, not one of the 11 super carriers, but one of the 9 small regular carriers, non-super carriers, along that primarily has Harriers and attack helicopters, along with a few amphibious assault ships that also have a carrier deck that also carry a few attack helicopters each, and F-35s and Reaper drones have been flown in to Puerto Rico, and now, most recently, you've seen in the what's the word? My brain is failing me. Thumbnail. In the thumbnail image I put for the stream, via C-17s. We have begun flying in, and I believe to Aruba as well, to Trinidad and Tobago and Aruba. We have begun flying in undisclosed, unspecified, no information given shipments of either equipment and personnel and or probably a mix of both, obviously, because you need one to operate the other. So we've begun flying stuff in to those two with no specification yet given or yet given as to what it was, and or no one on the ground was able to actually see the C-17s unload. So no one was able to get a glimpse of what it was. And apparently, in the next few days, we're going to start bringing stuff down to Grenada as well. And one additional ship was brought in also this week, I believe. So no longer just naval and a few air assets. Now it's fair enough to deal with Venezuela number of air assets in Puerto Rico. Fair enough to deal with Venezuela number of naval vessels in the sea. And now also stuff is being flown in semi-discreetly to the islands around Venezuela. Most likely, I would suspect that's primarily just air defense systems that are going to that are just going to like cover the range, so that if Venezuela tries to shoot any kind of retaliation or missiles out or fly what few functioning aircraft it has out, that they can be free targeted by those before they actually get anywhere out near any naval vessels or even remotely close to Puerto Rico. That would be my assumption of what's being placed on the islands, but I don't know for sure. And apart from the prior preempting of any public cause needed, where over the past month, the current U.S. administration has declared that the U.S. is at war with drug cartels, just like it was at war with terror, and has also declared that the government of Venezuela is in all effect, I believe, where it was worded something like that, a drug cartel. So, it lets them string two and two together in terms of publicity. And also, this week, the administration announced after Venezuela had publicly made an offer that the offer was like they would stop selling oil to China and or anyone else, and would would only sell oil exports to the U.S. and or anyone the U.S. allowed. The administration shot that down and said that diplomacy is no longer on the table. Nothing other, no other specific wording was given. Just the statement of diplomacy is no longer on the table. So if any of you, which I doubt anyone who actually watches me still is, but if any of you are really still doubting that we're doing Venezuela, I really hope it's gotten into your head now that we're doing Venezuela. And as I'd said before, this was always coming. I had I had said that it would be sometime in the second half of the 2020s. Those of you who've been around longer may remember that. I I thought it would. I did think it would be a little bit later than this. I thought it would be somewhat later, like another couple of years, and I also thought like Venezuela would try the whole Guyana invasion thing, which we would then use to jump in on them from. But it looks like we're just going to jump them first, and I assume the reason is that since we are directly going in for Taiwan when that starts, assuming the military command staff decided that we just want to since this was always going to happen, we just want to hurry up and get this out of the way before Taiwan starts, so that even though Venezuela will not require anywhere near as much attention, we they just want to make sure that we will have as little diverted attention as possible when uh, intervention in Taiwan actually comes up. Let's see, did we get anybody? uh, no questions, unless there's a desync. No. All right, it is just you two so far. Or technically, there's more people. They're just silent lurkers. But yeah, the Venezuela is about it is about petroleum, obviously, as they're capable as is of producing 3 million barrels per day, a plateau of 3 million barrels per day. However, uh, because of the whole societal collapse and implosion thing, in which 60% of their oil and gas engineers fled the country over the last like decade or so, they have only just now been able to get back up to 1.1 million, and that's only been with Chevron's intervention, and strugglingly so. So the the idea behind it from like a strategic standpoint is that Maduro needs to go and needs to be replaced with someone amicable who will say yes on whatever paper, so that outside oil and gas industry intervention can be rushed in, bring Venezuela back up to 3 million barrels per day, and or up to the full 5 million barrels per day that the uh, Orinoco Orinoco belt is actually capable of, so that there will be a 5+ million barrel per day indefinite source in terms of political administration planning, at least, or economic terminology planning. A practically indefinite 5 million barrel per day source nearby to the U.S. alongside Canada and now quickly rising Guyana. So so that there will be active supply on the market to alleviate disruptions from the imploding Russian oil and gas industry and Iranian, and also just kind of overall from a U.S. strategic worries point, also so that we ourselves at least can can get into an assured position of just no longer having to worry about Persian Gulf or Middle East cutoffs altogether, at least in terms of our functionality. We still will intervene in there like all the time, regardless, because that supply is still required for the functionality of the entire world itself. But for our own explicit domestic energy security, or even just regional functionality, Venezuela has been decided upon. So the strikes have continued one after another. One one of the fuel depots in Crimea was struck and has mostly burned down, and that was that was the one at one of the I think one of only two airfields that still had fuel tanks left on the peninsula. No, that's not Belgorod. This is Belgorod. And there have been multiple strikes on power plants across Belgorod, additional strikes across some of the remaining fuel storage depots in southern Russia. And where was the new big refinery strike was in Nizhny, which I think is This one, I probably got it wrong this time. Let's see. Is that Nizhny? It is. Ah, I've defeated my own brain decay. My geography knowledge remains intact. So that is Nizhny. So the refinery there was struck, and also additional oil pumping stations, degrading the functionality and ability to move oil around through the pipeline network, and I think it was in Astrakhan, but I'm not positive, a natural gas processing plant, because despite common assumptions, the natural gas is not just pure methane that comes right out of the ground and immediately goes to you like straight through pipes with nothing done to it. Natural gas does have other things in it, some other useful minor gases that we separate out to make stuff with and or use for fuel. And also it also has impurities just like oil that need to be brought out of it. So no, natural gas does not just get directly used straight out of the ground. It also has to be processed at least to a certain extent. You can just directly use it if you really wanted to, which is what we did, in the early days of the 1900s when we were first starting to use it. But as we discovered, if you just use it raw, it all the other things in it cause issues, uh, more like knocking explosiveness, which damages machinery and whatever you're using it with, and the impurities also, the different elements it carries with it will do things like cause decay and degradation in like the pipelines and in the metal of the machinery, and also if parts of them leak out as well, they are a lot of them are way more toxic and lethal than just the methane itself would be. So natural gas does also have to be processed. It's just not as commonly thought of a need as having to refine oil is. So this was the I think they did strike this one before once like last year, but other than that, this is the first big wave strike on a natural gas refinery or natural gas processing plant. Everything else up to this point has primarily been oil refineries ever since the nonstop Ukrainian strikes against Russian oil and gas infrastructure started in the beginning of August. It's now been 2 months now nonstop. This is the first time in this seemingly never ending wave of strikes. This is the first one that's gone against a major natural gas processing plant. Everything else has primarily been refineries all over the place, along with oil pipelines and occasionally some of the remaining storage depots that were not struck during the campaigns, the 2 week long campaigns last year and at the start of this year. And as well, as is included in the title, Russia had to almost double the sign on bonus again. So, since post mobilization, they had maintained a relatively decent number, about 30,000 uh, willing meat wave death signups per month, by offering a few $1,000. And eventually that started to waver. And every time it wavered, they managed to bring it back up by increasing the amount offered. So they eventually found themselves at a point of having to go up to offering the equivalent of $40,000 for sign on bonuses, direct pay up front. And they've kept it right around there for about it's been 9, 10 months since the start of this year. Yeah, it's right there in front of me. August is 10. I'm dumb. My brain has failed me. So for 10 months, it's been solidly around 40K. And if you recall from way back at the start of this year, the way they got around this was offering, or the way they got around having to increase it further and strain their budget was by offering $100,000 equivalent of loan forgiveness, of debt deletion absolution for the associated soldier and or their family. And this would be given, unlike being given up front, this was a promise of if they do the service they sign on for, which is uh, on paper is to survive 6 months apparently. Well, a huge amount of them kind of, don't. So, and when they get wounded, they get treated and then kind of just sent back. So this is in quotation marks because this was a false promise. It was a get out of jail card for the Russian government, promising this, but then if the guy dies, then they don't really have to actually honor the agreement, and also it's only given once his service is up, and if they just don't let him leave the service, then they don't have to do that. So uh, whether the it took the general Russian male public this long to catch on to that, or they kind of knew that it was a fake offer already, and this many up to this point were just okay with signing up for a 10 to 20% chance of death for a 40,000 buck uh, check. I don't know the specifics, but that held for a bit. However, over the last few months, since the start of summer, the number of dudes signing up dropped from 30 down to a few times going under 20, down into the upper teens thousands per month, which is below, apparently, by their own admission, the number that Russia needs to maintain the assault waves that it does. So, to get those numbers back up, at least thus far, back up to 25,000 per month, they had to jump up the sign on bonus now to $70,000, which is a financial problem for the government's perspective, because again, unlike the loan forgiveness promise, the upfront money is not fake. They kind of it's in the name. They kind of actually have to pay the dude that upfront uh, before he then goes off to die. So that's why they did the loan forgiveness dupe, and we're trying desperately to avoid having to do this, having to go up with higher actual payout numbers. But the sign up numbers were starting to drop too low, so they did this now up to 70,000 upfront payment, and that has been enough to get them back up to 25,000 dudes signing on per month for the time being. So we'll see how long this one goes for, how much of an expanded pool of guys uh, willing to sign up to a World War I but with drones environment for uh, for 70K, or a World War I but with drones survival rate basically. It's not actually as bad as World War I was. I think I'm pretty sure it's World War I, especially on the western end, just because of the nonsensicalness of trench charging, and not having like real real aircraft like World War II had, and real like functioning tanks and ground assault vehicles yet. If I remember correctly, World War I had a higher like death rate out of the participating troops throughout the war. Like World War I fatality rate was in actual double digit percentages. I think in some cases it was like, close to between 15 and 20%. What what they're seeing with the Russian charges and assault waves in Donetsk is not that high, but it's still like ludicrously high to where no other country would willingly be continuing to attrit itself like this, except maybe North Korea, I guess. I don't know. They're pretty cult mentality. They probably do it, but it's around 10%, which is, it's at a level where, there's no one else would actually be willingly doing this. At least under the ratio of strategic gains that's being done here. I mean, China is willing to take a big hit for the chance of getting Taiwan because of what Taiwan means, both strategically in terms of in terms of a military strategic standpoint, in terms of getting a hold of all the semiconductor processing stuff, even though Taiwan has said that they will blow up those factories if it looks like China is actually going to succeed as a dying middle finger, and also as just part of the CCP's whole uh, persona cult thing. Uh, what's the what would be the better word? Cultural strategic standpoint, because you've spent 80 years going on about how Taiwan is China, and it it would be a big like socio-cultural from the CCP standpoint morale boost to actually then secure that. They're willing to take those kind of like number hits at a for a chance of succeeding at this. But if they were doing this, the modern China at least, if they were doing this, if they were doing what Russia is doing for similar gains of like gaining one rice field at a time in North Vietnam or something, then yeah, even modern China would have stopped a while ago. For Taiwan, they're willing to do it, but we've passed the point where like no one else would be willingly continuing this at this point. Or actually, hold on, I guess Azerbaijan would probably do it to exterminate Armenia. They've, I mean, even if you just go listen to Azerbaijan's national anthem alone, it's pretty death culty. There's even lines in there about like how their purpose is to drain themselves of all their blood. So maybe North Korea, maybe Azerbaijan in the pursuit of destroying Armenia, but no one else really. Like the only other one is China, but the only route in which they are willing to take those kind of casualty numbers is for an attempt at Taiwan. There's nothing else, nothing else outside of self-defense from an invasion where they would willingly be doing something like that. Wait for the lag. The lag is over. All right, that will probably be it. Like I said, I want to get back to writing. I do feel like there was one other item though. I always feel like that at the end. It usually ends up being true. And it's almost never two things or multiple things. It always ends up being one thing specifically that I'm forgetting about. Uh, at least among things that I would want to speak about. Let me think. Let me think. Oil and gas in industry wide, worldwide. Was there anything? big and specific that I'm forgetting about that I wanted to mention? I don't think so, or at least looking over countries name by name, nothing's popping up. Okay, not oil and gas industry. What else? What else could it have possibly been? What am I forgetting? Something happened somewhere. Something happens somewhere, everywhere, every day, but something in the vein of things that I would probably normally speak about happened somewhere within the last few days that I'm forgetting about. Uh, it's not coming back, whatever it is. Was it with Indonesia? Uh, for some reason, I'm thinking it was something with Indonesia, but the only thing I remember with them recently was that massive copper mine on Sulawesi Islands has been shut down for like 2 years because it got so damaged from a massive mountain mudslide. And that copper mine is responsible for 3% of the world's copper supply, so that was an actual sizable hit. But I covered that last time. I can't really think of anything else, whatever it might be. Let's see. Oh, wow. People started talking as soon as I actually turned away. Let's see. Okay, chat. Fracking is not coming to an end. It has gone past its peak in terms of being a source of increasing production. Now it's entered a phase of holding production where all the new wells being fracked are they're stacked so close to each other volumetrically. I did a video, look through the channel specifically, where I did go into the actual specific mechanics of this, of where the depleting ratios are coming from. But now, despite continuing to frack hundreds and hundreds of wells, it's reached the point where it's plateauing. Like the sudden boost upwards after declining from 13.6 down to 13.3 just recently. Over the last month, U.S. production jumped back up by a couple 100,000. That was primarily because of a large field in the Gulf, a decently sized field up home in Alaska, and another smaller field in the Gulf that all came online within the last month or so. That their numbers stacked up gave a sudden upward boost like that. And there is one more decently sized Gulf field that will be coming online. I believe they said either right around the end of this year or sometime in the early part of next year. But fracking has gotten uh, now to the point where it's just at a holding phase. And even with continued like racing for more fracking, it's still going to tip downwards. But yeah, the U.S. production still might end up peaking a little bit higher than the all-time peak, which was at the end of last year at 13.63 million barrels per day. It still might jump up like a little bit above that somewhere by like maybe a couple 100,000. But this we've reached the plateau out stage, and so even if that stayed permanent forever, that's rounded down roughly 13 from us ourselves about uh, since Canada is going to level off around 5.5, around that's around 3 from Canada, so that gives you 16 in total, and so that leaves you with 4 to come up with from elsewhere, which we have been sourcing for the last number of years from just scattered random imports from anyone. However, now heading into the future, we're going to have a solid one coming up from Guyana. Colombia and Ecuador are phasing out as exporters, as Colombia's production is down to around 740,000, while their domestic consumption has now exceeded 500,000, and Ecuador is down to about 450,000, while their domestic consumption is up around 320 or 330. And Brazil sells to anyone and everyone all over the place. So, yeah, Venezuela is like the security stopgap. If we can get something like anywhere between 3 and 4 coming from them to fill that constant gap. Although that gap's going to grow, though, because that 13 is only going to, shrink and decline down from this point. But if we can get Venezuela up to the 5 million barrel per day plateau it's capable of for many decades to come, then at most their domestic consumption would go up to maybe 800,000. So you can round that up to a million, chop that off of 5 or 4, and that gets you 3 to 4 million barrels per day of exports. That would then be within a guaranteed secure zone for the U.S. And we can rotate those out for not as heavy oil with like occasional Brazil shipments. But yeah, that's the general energy security idea. Okay, well, oil prices already have gone lower. They're at 58 right now, primarily because primarily because the ongoing increase in OPEC output, continued acceptance that China's oil demand has peaked, and the revelation that Iraq's output has actually been a bit higher than has been stated for a little bit. They actually have been staying at around 4.2 as opposed to being down between 3.9 and 4. And also, uh, refusal so far to accept uh, the the declining Russian output consequence of particularly strikes on the pipeline network and on the export terminals, as the Russian oil companies themselves publicly said they were doing and had to do, although the Russian government denied such, and uh, OPEC is just reiterating whatever the Russian government says or the Russian energy ministry. And despite these obvious fall downs, the Russian government, after the last year and a half of insisting that they've remained perfectly stable at 9 million barrels per day, they have now, in the last month, the month when all of this damage has been done, have abruptly just claimed out of the blue now that they've magically increased their production by 300,000 barrels per day. So I guess this is their idea of like uh, doing like a publicity middle finger stunt in terms of public statements, at least. But it's a big case of no, you haven't. Your literal capacity to even send the oil that you were producing anywhere has taken a fairly sizable hit. Don't start trying this whole like actually we're increasing our production charade. Although part of the price pull down has also been the government shutdown in the U.S. and a worsening economic outlook as the stock market is starting to turn down a bit. I don't know if that's the AI bubble maybe starting to falter or pop, or if that's mostly just regular stocks that are going down. But a combination of things has the oil price now down to $58 per barrel, which is bad for oil and gas exploration in the present day environment, and especially bad for any continued domestic fracking in the U.S. Obviously, given the late stage fracking that the U.S. is at, Argentina can still keep going because they're in early prolific stage fracking, but it has gone down to 58. I mean, yeah, another bonus from that obviously is way reduced revenues on Russia's end, but that's still not good supply wise in the long run because that causes everyone to start curtailing any new exploration and development projects. Still, blah blah blah. Gold for yes, gold. Gold reached and exceeded $4,000 per ounce briefly, and as was the case previously. Hold on, let's let this load. Go to your channel. Go to videos. And so yeah, I had made the gold is nearing $4,000 video, and gold exceeded 4,000 2 days after that. Kind of similar like pattern I keep having with stuff. Like I did the $3,000 per ounce video about how it was about to hit 3,000 and eventually four. I think I ended up putting this up and when it was at about 2850, and I was kind of afraid I was gonna look stupid and it was gonna like end up crashing back down or something. But it ended up with a similar situation of this one of me missing the actual hit line by just a few days. So gold went back up over four today. The gold's at 4,000. Silver is up to $50 per ounce. Okay, I don't know why the screen jumped around like that. Silver's up to 50, which nominally on paper is the highest it's ever been. Not really when you account for inflation. Technically, the 1980 or 1979 price spike uh, in today's dollars would convert to triple digits, and the $49 per ounce 2011 spike in current dollars would be something like 72. So not like actual value wise breaking the previous records yet, but it has reached $50 per ounce, which is now just above actually the range of where it roughly should be supply wise. It's at a point where it would be entering into a category of should be in the 50s, like within the next year or two. But now it's actually starting to go up just a bit above the curve. But that's beneficial to the whole supply deficit thing one way or another, because in this scenario, as opposed to the prior ignorant market scenario where it was stuck at $20 per ounce for almost 10 years, now the mining industry is actually going to have a decent incentive, even if it even if they only have it for a short while, which with the actual supply deficit, it's really should not be a short while. They they will have an actual financial boost and incentive work out getting some more supply and not running us into a zero brick wall scenario. But yeah, I think, yeah, early on at like the start of the 2020s, I'd said something like gold would probably end up going towards around 4K, maybe over it. I don't know. And I also said silver silver would definitely during the 2020s, probably in the second half, end up going up to like at least 70 or 80 as like a floor of how high it would get, if not going into triple digits because of the obscene deficit scenario that we're in. And oil, uh, yeah, like I said, oil ended the day at $58 a barrel. Okay, off X, blah blah blah. Got these, blah blah. Yes, yes, really, for that Taiwan question. They did say that, and in their case, yes, they absolutely would do that. Again, if the scenario, this is in the scenario where it looks like, and or the Taiwanese government at least is convinced that that the invasion is going to succeed and that Taiwan's going to fall, then in that case, yes, they absolutely would actually blow the semiconductor factories. But even even all other factors like not included, just the fact that it's a long distance, like 100 miles plus, naval invasion alone kind of already puts it on like a 5% chance of success at best. When you start stacking up everything else, especially the aforementioned, fact that we are going in directly when this starts, along with Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and the Aussies are also jumping in with us, and possibly India might do something. They've they when we did the last like big practice round for this on our end with a big naval ensemble of us, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and the Philippines, and a couple UK ships were there even. India actually showed up as well with three vessels. So I don't know for sure. I can't tell you for sure if they will jump in or lagging, 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 lagging. We're normal. Okay, back to normal. So I can't tell you for sure if they would jump in, but because of them showing up to that, I'm thinking maybe that there's a maybe chance that in a small contingent, they might also navally get involved a bit for the sake of like naval and or naval aviation experience in combat, and also to say they were there and to get to have their part played in assuring assuring the process of knocking China out as like a major threat in their regard to them from India's strategic point of view. Thank you, Google Earth. You are amazing. Google is an amazing company. Such amazing non-dysfunctional sites. So remember, from India's strategic standpoint, China is like their biggest strategic threat of any kind, followed then by Pakistan, who is not as big of a threat in totality, but because of proximity and open flatness and not having the whole Himalayas between them, Pakistan, despite being weaker, is on a similar threat level. Although, in terms of, as I've said before, in terms of opponents to deal with, opponents to fight, Pakistan is obviously much weaker. But because of because of proximity alone and little difficulty, short distance traveling of anything like missiles, Pakistan would be able to inflict a similar amount of damage just by proximity alone. But were India to ever have to conflict with China on its own, China would be the much larger, more difficult adversary. So there is a chance, based on their joining of at least that one strategic exercise, that they might join in on the naval and naval aviation aspect uh, to do their small part, at least in assuring a Chinese knockout. Or they might do they might do some if they again if they do anything, they might do some like minor airstrikes interior on the interior of China. But because of the difficulty there, there's not that much in terms of like valuable military strategic assets in the Himalayas on China's part. There is one airbase there, and there's a couple air bases here at like the foot of the Himalayas, and then there's some up in the Taklamakan, but those are kind of out of reach. And there's one up near the tri-border area with Pakistan, India, and China. But because they joined the whole naval aspect, though, they I would think they might navally join in, at least with a few vessels. I don't know for sure, but if they do decide to like join in some part, I would lean more towards them probably joining in on the naval combat aspect. And that was a whole sideline off that one question. Uh, Cu- Cu- Cubans have been fighting for Russia from like really early on. That's not really new. They've I mean they've ramped up their recruitment attempts now that they've lost Syria because they were pulling dudes from Syria who, because of how dilapidated the situation was there, they were able to dupe in that case. They were able to set it up as a, hey, once you get here, we'll send, like 10 grand, $10,000 back to your family in Syria. And then obviously did no such thing once they got there and just sent them to die. And it looks like 30,000 was the limit on how many of his troops Kim Jong Un was willing to loan Putin in this, as he has not sent any new waves as of yet. That 3% given North Korea, despite its small population, because of heavily enforced military servitude, they do have a 1.5 million man army. So that's 2% of his military that Kim was willing to throw away for Putin for the sake of we no one knows for sure, but likely it was free grain shipments and like free petroleum, free coal and everything, as opposed to North Korea paying through whatever like bartering system it was using otherwise. Although this was, I guess, technically you could argue this was still a barter. It was just bartering with human lives in exchange for free grain and free oil. But if they've increased like the recruiting stuff in Cuba, that's primarily now going to be mostly because they've lost Syria to pull from, and partly also because they've lost they've lost North Korea, at least for the moment. It seems Kim's not willing to throw anything else out for them just yet. He might change his mind. I don't know. He is, kind of a bit unpredictable at the very least. But health of Xi Jinping, I have no idea. Uh, he he is fine as far as I'm aware. But any like appearances he does are uh, and any information China wise is a lot more carefully curated and crafted. I've drawn this person before. Wait for the lag. Wait for the lag. Wait for the lag because we don't the audio. Okay, we're back. I've drawn this comparison before, but current China is like what Russia used to be as the USSR. China now does what the USSR used to do. In that China does like actual good, effective propaganda. China tells believable lies, and we know this because so many of us, and even in some and even in some aspects of strategic military thinking and assumptions, we've believed a lot of these that we've then found out later were lies. Just like with the USSR, the USSR was actually really good at espionage. It was really good at telling lies, at getting us to believe them. Like a lot of the now looking back in hindsight, obviously like ridiculous strength claims that they made. Now looking back on it in hindsight, it seems like oh yeah, that stuff was like obviously ridiculous. But at the time during the Cold War, even in our military echelons, they had us in the West believing most of the stuff they said. Russia, Russia, unlike the USSR, is horrible at telling lies, as shown with even just the most recent one, where you know their oil and gas infrastructure has taken all this horrific damage, but they just randomly say, actually, our production is increasing. We ramped it up by 300,000 barrels per day in just the last month alone. Or the fact that even before the war started, before the massive outward migration, and before the casualties and everything, Russia's population was already decreasing. But since the war started, for one, they've just claimed that their fertility rate stopped dropping and has remained exactly 1.41. They 1 year into the war, they just started claiming that their population was no longer decreasing and it was staying like exactly at 146 million. And even last year, they just out of nowhere claimed that actually our population is going up now. For your information, it actually went up by 500,000. Thank you very much. So Russia's like not even trying anymore. So if you're not even trying to begin with, I don't know why you're actually. But why are you trying if you're just going to put zero effort into it? Why not just like stay silent and say absolutely nothing at all? Like you're putting more effort into things by doing like really low effort lies. You could just like save yourself the effort of like typing up the statements and just continue, I don't know, drinking champagne or whatever in your mansion down in Sochi, wherever Sochi is. It's like around here or something. Yeah, it's right there. It's near Abkhazia. So I don't get why you're even trying at this anymore. It's gotten pretty ridiculous. Okay. Uh, regardless of a diff look, regardless of any additional stuff coming up from chat, I'm sorry, but this is half an hour longer than I thought I was going to do this. So I am going to drop out now.